What are the benefits of the Chabahar port deal with Iran? What are the benefits India will reap? Okay, so let's go straight to the map because this is a map kind of thing. All right, where's the map? Here's the map. So where is this port? It is a port in located in Iran. All right. So we go westwards, and here we have the port of Chabahar over here. This is the port. Okay. And if we were to use the satellite images, you'll find that this port has a couple of terminals, the port of Shahid Beheshti, and there's a different port here as well. Darya Kuchik, Chabahar Port Fishing Harbor, and so on. So India has signed an agreement with Iran, which will enable India to operate one of the terminals in this port, I think the Shahid Beheshti, for a decade, 10 years. Okay, so that is what's come in the news. This happened this past week. So what are the benefits of this for India? I mean, why? I mean, everybody is talking about this. Why is this a big deal? Well, you have to understand it's all about geography. Historically, India's historical borders, they touched on Central Asia and Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the past 500 years, was no longer part of India. So India's borders historically touched Afghanistan and nations like Tajikistan. So that was the border of India, and India could access Central Asia and Eurasia from its borders, from its northern and western borders. Now, after 1947, the so-called Indian leadership of that time allowed the partitioning of India and the creation of an extremely hostile nation called Pakistan, a temporary artificial nation. And the Pakistanis have always had this policy of denying India access to Central Asia, because now the entire access to Central Asia is cut off by Pakistan. And that's a inherently hostile nation as long as it exists. So India no longer has access to Central Asia and to Eurasia, which is a disaster, which is something people in India don't realize at all. We just don't understand geography, because you need access to Central Asia and to Europe, etc., for trade purposes. Look at China's OBOR, One Belt, One Road, the BRI project. They're able to access Europe via land. But India doesn't have any access. India is essentially completely cut off. It's almost like a landlocked country. You know, on the north you have Chinese occupied Tibet, to the west you have Pakistan and Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and in the east you have Burma, which is under civil war kind of situation. So India is completely cut off. The only access India has to other nations is either by air or by sea, and India hasn't really developed its port system and its maritime prowess. So that's the only access India has essentially to the rest of the world, is by air or by shipping. So now if you have a port over here which you control, the Chabahar port, then what you can do is you can bypass Pakistan entirely and send and receive shipments via the west coast, probably from Mumbai and other ports, through Chabahar, and then you can send shipments into Afghanistan. You can send shipments into Eurasia. There is the international north-south transport corridor that India is part of, which will connect the port of Mumbai to the port of Baku in Azerbaijan. Where Azerbaijan doesn't have an economy as such; it is entirely dependent on oil, and we can also connect India to Russia via the international north-south transport corridor, and so on. So Chabahar is a port that will facilitate this. It's going to be a patchwork kind of route from Mumbai to Chabahar, or from the west coast of India to Chabahar. You will send stuff and receive stuff by sea through shipping channels, and from Chabahar you can have a rail link to a place called Zahedan over here, and from Zahedan into Afghanistan you can send stuff, and you can also have other routes which will take you to Baku and the Caucasus region, the South Caucasus region, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, etc. And then you have southern Russia over there, and you can also access Europe if you want through this. So that's why it's kind of a game changer for the past 7-8 decades. India has been deprived of its historical traditional access to Central Asia and Eurasia, and now we can depend on Iran and get this done. So it's kind of long circuitous kind of route, but at least it kind of restores India's access to Central Asia and Eurasia via Iran, which is why India will have to depend on Iran for this. Now, why would Iran do such a thing? Well, it also gives Iran options, right? Uh, Iran already has a strategic agreement with China. Iran has good relations with Russia, and this is a transshipment route that will eventually connect India with Russia as well. So it all works out to every nation's benefit. Not very well for China, but definitely for India and Iran and Russia and various other nations that are connected through this. So these are the benefits of the Chabahar port deal for India. It essentially restores India's historical access to Central Asia and Europe after a gap of almost eight or so decades. So that's why it's important. It's good for the Indian economy. India is a rising economy. India is a growing economy. India, in the next couple of years, will become a $5 trillion economy. India wants to be the manufacturing hub of the world. To have that, you need extremely good and resilient and reliable supply chains and trade routes and diverse supply chains and trade routes. So by doing this, India ensures that it has multiple options of by which it can send shipments to various parts of the world. And that's why it is important for India.